The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising and marketing. Welcome back to our brand side segment where we're interviewing not agency professionals, but the folks that agency professionals report to. On this episode, we feature Zach Burton. Zach is in brand and product marketing at Spotify. One of my favorite brands. We built our brand Breaking Entering through Spotify for Creators over the past 5 years. And I think we can all agree that we recognize Spotify Wrapped, which I believe is one of the best pieces of marketing, advertising content of all time. The fact that everybody shares it every single year, people look forward to it, and not just the consumers, but on the back end, the creators, we get our own reports, and artists get their own reports. And Zach Burton is a part of the team that works on the insights that are delivered to artists on their end. But Zach's story is incredible. It's going to be really beneficial for anybody looking to break into marketing. He'll talk about how he broke into Spotify from starting his first internship where he went to school at Ohio State University, but his first internship was at ESPN. His dreams of becoming an on-air personality in sports broadcast, how it shifted to the marketing landscape, which led to more internships, his first full-time job at Salesforce, how the pandemic hit in 2020, and then how he had his pivotal quarter life crisis that we all know and love at 25 years old. If you're not old enough for that, you'll get there, and broke into Spotify. It's a great story. Zach is incredible. He sheds light on the product marketing world, but then also on the brand marketing world at Spotify. So I'm learning. You'll learn along the way. We can't cover it all in this 40-minute episode. So please connect with Zach on LinkedIn. He drops his Instagram somewhere in the episode, so you can DM him there on Instagram. It's a great episode. We hope you enjoy. Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Brand Side Podcast. And as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right. It's looking good here. Zach Burton, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast Brand Side Edition. So our folks know what that means. We're talking with you today about what you're up to on the marketing side of the world. How's life?
Hey, Gino. No, great to be here. Life is good. I'm coming off of this crazy 2025 break. And so I feel like I'm coming into the new year all refreshed, all ready to go. I naturally do a lot of reflection around this time, so I feel like this conversation is going to be perfect. Anyways.
Wonderful. Heck yeah. I mean, you were working hard before the holidays because you are a part of what I would say is the greatest marketing advertising program initiative in the world today, perhaps of all time. And that to me is the Spotify Wrapped and how it's shared with everybody. People are celebrating their own personality. They're engaging with the brand. You were a part of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. No, it's an insane experience, man. I feel like it definitely changed my career for the better. Just getting the opportunity to work on it this year. It's a village. There's over 100 teams working on rap every year, man. And so there's so many different ways that you can plug in. But I had the opportunity to work on the artist-facing campaign of rap. So not necessarily what you and I would see is just like general consumers of Spotify, but what the artist and label teams see. And so that really gave me a lot of intel just into kind of like how the music industry is involved in rap. And obviously one of the most exciting parts is how artists engage with rap and with their fans with rap, right? And so it was a really rewarding experience. I feel like it gave me just, the insight I needed to kind of see maybe where I wanted to go in my career, but also just kind of like what is possible with rap. So it's a machine for sure.
Yes. I mean, not that anybody will care, but on the Spotify for creators, if anybody wants to start a podcast on Spotify, like let me know. I can help them out. But I've been using it for 5 years, and it gives me analytics on the back end about who my listeners are, where they're from, like which was the most listened to episode, and all those graphics that we use so much on the back end to understand who's listening. And that's so great from a creator standpoint. So I'm assuming you're doing that for the artists, so artists can see their metrics, who's listening, what demographics, what locations, etc. Probably more in depth for like major artists versus my small B2B podcast. Is that true?
That's accurate for sure. Because I'm sure you're aware, if you've been around for the last 5 years, Spotify for Creators had a little bit of a rebrand this year, and so
Yep.
that's why this year's wrap is really big for them. But we were all under the Creator Wrapped umbrella. But this was
Okay.
the 8th year of Rap for Artists specifically, so we've been doing it for a little while. But you're exactly right. Essentially, just figuring out unique ways to communicate those insights to artists to make them feel celebrated, really like honor and respect the year that they had, and really just show the impact that it had, right, on their biggest fans. Because artists are much more than just what we see day to day, right? There's so many different tiers of artists out here that are, music is their livelihood, right? So you want to make sure that everybody can participate in rap as much as possible.
It's great. It's great. 'Cause, yeah, you give those shareable assets as well to them or for their teams. You give it to the creators, and then obviously the consumers, the day-to-day users that go crazy putting on their story. It's that time of the year. Spotify Wrapped is coming up, and all the competitor players get all sad because they don't have it. So it's on me. I'm saying that, not Zach. But it's so cool, man, that you're a part of that, and I'm grateful to be a part of it. I've been part of Spotify since 2011, so I'm probably the first
Yeah.
adopter. But
OG, you're an OG, man.
yeah, man, I'm glad I got to say that on the record. I can pull up I can pull up the receipts too. But we're here to talk about you. We're here to talk about your role as a brand and product market. Let me start that over. You're a brand and product marketing manager at Spotify. Is that correct?
Yeah, so like my day-to-day title is a product marketing manager at Spotify, but I know for the last 6 months I've had a cool opportunity to do a little bit of a stretch role on the brand marketing side for artists specifically, which is how I got to tap in with rap. So yeah, these days, I'm just tapping into a little bit of both and really just kind of like getting to work on some cool opportunities as they come up.
Okay, I got it. You got to teach me everything here. Like, what's the difference between these two roles? I have no clue. I know art direction, copywriting, strategy, and an agency landscape. So help
Yeah,
us, the ad nerds and the ad folks from agency landscape, try to understand just high level, because we can't do it
yeah,
in one episode. Like, what the different types of roles are, at least at Spotify. Like, if I were to
yeah.
break into marketing, and help me understand those differences.
Oh yeah, man. It's something I had to learn too. Whenever I graduated from college and had to figure out what do I even want to do with my life, you know what I mean? But I mean, there's so many different roles, and I feel like it taps into so many different things. I will say, in my day to day role, like as a product marketing manager, I actually sit on the consumer side. So like all of the products and features that you're interacting with on the platform, my team has the opportunity to lead those. And so we essentially serve as a bridge between the product world and the marketing world. So it's our job to kind of be keen to different product roadmaps that are out there that product managers, engineers, data scientists, that they're all like crafting up. And then we come in and we essentially get a better understanding of that and create a marketing moment around it. It's our job to bring in the consumer intel to say, maybe this is the culture moments that are happening. This is what consumers are saying that they want. This is how we want to essentially launch it to the world, right? Whether it's a billboard in Times Square to the in-app messaging that you're getting on Spotify. Like every product serves a different purpose. So it's our job to kind of bridge those two worlds together so it doesn't feel like a product team is doing this, a marketing team is doing this. It's just Spotify is doing this.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So that's kind of what I get to do as a PMM, which is really cool. But to your point, there's so many teams within marketing, and so I work with brand folks, right, who are overseeing the Spotify brand overall. I would say a big difference between our two roles, which is why it was cool for me to get to tap into both, is that PMs really work a lot with product stakeholders. I would say brand folks really work a lot with managing creatives. And I think that's where the agency experiences come in. There's a lot of folks that'll come from different agencies to work at Spotify because the muscle is similar when it comes to the number of projects that you're working on. Like the
Mhm.
sprints are very tight. You're working with a lot of different designers, creatives. So our brand managers are always overseeing those to make sure that those, project timelines get across the door. But yeah, whether it's copywriters, designers, whatever may have you, creative wise, I would say that's more so who brand folks are working with versus
Okay.
me. That's more so product stakeholders.
Okay. So we got brand folks and we got product marketing folks. Got it. And then is there an in-house creative team that the product marketing folks can tap into as well as a brand, or is that strictly reserved to brand, or is that all externally housed?
Yeah, I love working with in-house creatives at Spotify.
Okay.
Like why wouldn't we? They're there. You know what I mean? So like that's obviously the goal, and I think a lot of creatives that come from agencies' goal is to essentially become in-house creative at whatever the company may be. So obviously at
Mhm.
Spotify, we have a lot of folks that'll come over with the goal of being full-time in-house creative.
And where
But
do they sit?
obviously,
Is it called like an agency in-house, like, or is that in the brand side of the world?
it's
Where
more
do
so
they
on
sit?
it's more so on the brand side of the business. Like
Mhm.
we'll have like some that maybe like are contracted in, for example. So like we'll have like our brand managers that manage those, but we actually do have like a head of brand creative, and so they'll
Gotcha.
sit under them on that team, right? So those are your producers, those are your copywriters, like all the terminology that you know all too well, right? So
Mhm.
um, it really just depends, right, on bandwidth, budget, all those types of things. If we can work with our in-house creatives, because they are reserved for a lot of like the big rock projects, I would say. If not, then that's when we start to outsource to different agencies,
Sure.
just based on what we need.
Gotcha. So before we dive into like your side of the world, then for that brand side, what's like the mix there, like for the in-house creatives, like the brand creatives, like just from what you've seen in the peripherals or working with them, what are they usually from agency landscape? Are they older? Like, do you see some like interns on that side of the world, like from agency life? Maybe they got in early. What does it look like on the brand creative side?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it's a nice mix at Spotify because Spotify is kind of at this intersection, I would say, of kind of like entertainment, but also the tech umbrella, right? So you're going to
Mhm.
get folks that kind of have a little bit more of the corporate experience, but you're also going to have people that are straight up creatives and can't fake it even if they tried, right? So I would say for a lot of our creatives, like we do have different programs that we'll tap into externally, whether it's different fellowships to get, new young talent, right, coming in and being able to work on some cool things at Spotify. There are a lot of agency folks on our brand side, like I said earlier, just because like the muscle is so similar,
Mhm.
and honestly, a lot of the experience that they're bringing to the table client wise translates really well to what Spotify is trying to do in the marketplace
Mhm.
creatively as well. So I would say like that's why you see a little bit of a mix, but also it's really rewarding to have just like Spotify years under your belt. So like you do see some folks that are able to transition less more so on the creative side, more on just like the brand management side, because they're able to bring the experience of like, I've seen this, this doesn't work, this works, we tried that. So I think that's really important experience to bring to the table. But we even have some marketing specific internships that I think are great opportunities for folks that are earlier in their career trying to tap into the creative side of Spotify. Rotational programs, different things like that, I would say are probably like key
Mhm.
when it comes to folks early in their career trying to get into the BNC world. But I mean, the sky's the limit. It's not like working on my side of the business where there's like so many like specific types of like experiences you're expected to have. So I've seen just so many people come through the door for sure, just in my short almost 3 years there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's good to know. Any of those programs, so that Spotify has some internships, I'm assuming rotational programs for the brand and creative side you've mentioned.
Yeah. I know one that I've probably had the most purview to because it's not too like creative specific. It's just our aspiring marketing professionals rotation. It usually goes around, I won't say 2 years. But you're essentially able to bop around to about three rotations, if I'm not mistaken, throughout the
Love it.
marketing organization. So by the end of that, right, you have an opportunity to work on different teams, to really like integrate, work on those projects, own those projects, and kind of understand how that specific facet of marketing contributes to the overall campaign, Spotify brand overall. It's a really great program. I've had so many friends go through it, and they love it. Um, it's also, we have Pulse Fellows. I want to say they come in once a year, so we'll bring in about maybe 4 or 5 creatives. They get to work in different lanes, whether it's being closer to the brand strategy side or maybe closer to the production side of things. They might just be like just straight up talented designers. They get to just work on a lot of the things that you might see in Times Square and some of the other out of home services that we have. So I would say, yeah, fellowships and internships like AMP, as we call it, I think are just really easy opportunities to try to tap in earlier in your career, I
Love
would
it.
say.
Love it. Yep. Anytime I hear rotational program, my ears light up. I think those are probably the best opportunities to break in and then thrive in a business long term. They really take care of you, especially if it's a 2 year long program. You're not going to find that, listeners, at an agency. It'll be very rare to find a 2 year rotational program. It's just a
Yeah.
different world. They want you to intern and for like 3 months, they don't want to pay you. And then you'll eventually get a full time job in one spot. But there's a couple out there.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't say it
Yeah.
like that. But
Yeah.
um, so then let's kick it back and understand how you broke into Spotify. At what point in your life did you say to a young Zach or an older Zach that you want to be in the marketing ecosystem?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, man. Like, I feel like I knew I wanted to work in marketing earlier in my career without being able to put a name on it. Like, I didn't know that the things that people were doing were classified as marketing, I would say. But there were marketing adjacent things that I really liked. So I feel like coming into college, right? For example, I think there were a couple industries I was really interested in. One being just sports. I was a huge sports fanatic growing up. I grew up in Arkansas, which is just prime like SEC territory if you're a sports fan. So like you can't really grow up not being a sports fan. So coming out of high school, I went to Ohio State for school, right? And the sports legacy just continues. And I
Yeah.
was a journalism major going in. So like my whole goal was just to be basically who Stephen A. Smith is today. Like I was just like, you're not gonna tell me that this isn't what I'm supposed to do. And the more that I got into the industry, right, the things I was attracted to weren't like marketing per se, but they definitely weren't journalism. But journalism got me in the door for those things. And I think to your point about internships, like that's kind of how I started to really figure out like what I liked and what I didn't. So a prime example, I think my first example professionally, I worked at the ESPN affiliate in Cleveland specifically, and I had like half like production, and I was doing like some radio prod stuff, and then I had like half like marketing stuff. And I just really enjoyed the marketing stuff way more than I enjoyed like the radio prod stuff. I was like, yeah, I don't want to like sit here and like cut audio all day. And like, I don't want to sit here and kind of like produce talent all day. I kind of want to be out in the field with like the sponsors and really kind of figuring out basically like how do we amplify the brand? How do we bring in money? Like all these different things. I just wanted to be tapped in. And I think once I had that internship, it was over. I had to start pivoting.
How'd you get that internship and what year was that in college?
Yeah, so I was a little bit of a psycho. So that was my freshman year, right? Like
Ah,
right at the summer coming out of my freshman year. And I found it because I just popped up at this job fair that Ohio State has every fall and spring. And even when I was talking to the recruiter, she was just like, "Yeah, we're really just looking at like upperclassmen." I was just like, "Yeah, but you said it's unpaid, so it's fair game, right? It's not like you need anybody doing anything specific." And I think that's just one of those things. I'm just desperate, man. Like it was in Cleveland, it's 2 hours up the road from Columbus. I'm like, I'll make it work. But I was desperate to make it, especially like coming from Arkansas. Like those are opportunities you're not gonna get back home. So she gave me an interview off of charisma alone. I know she did. And then once I got to the interview process, I think, I was able to showcase more so like a growth mentality. Like I'm not
Yeah.
coming into this for anything specific, but to like figure out what I want to do. And it was one of the best opportunities I had, man. Like I honestly will say, and it just having the brand on my resume very early, it helped me out a lot for sure.
Oh
So
man,
I was
that's
ambitious.
foundational. That's incredible. Like it's unpaid, so it doesn't really matter what year I am. That's so funny.
Like think about it, you have nothing to lose. Like I think the most we got paid was maybe like a stipend for gas, but I wasn't even driving. So I'm like, I took some courses at the Cleveland University, like down the street, Cleveland State, and that was like my way of getting in because I'm taking like classes for the summer and then I'm like working here. So
Incredible.
it worked out.
So that internship then kind of shifted you away from being like on air personality journalist to the more of the marketing function. That was your first introduction. Was it like
Yeah.
that snap moment, your North Star completely shifted and everything you did beyond that led to marketing and learning more about marketing? Is that how it went down?
Yeah, it was almost like a toxic relationship. Like when you know you should leave, but you stay anyways. Like I feel like that was kind of like what it was. So I have like marketing adjacent things tugging at me, but I felt
Mhm.
like for so long I thought this is what I wanted to do, so I was holding on to it. You know what I mean? And so when I got back to campus, I did a couple more just like experiences. So like my job on campus was through an internship with Big Ten Network. So I would do like sideline reporting for some games, and I would also like run camera, graphics, like those types of things. Really great internship, but like it really just started to feel like work. Like some people really love it, and like I just didn't love it anymore. And I would say like it got to the point where after that sophomore year, I changed my major. I like completely changed my approach to even like finding internships, like all of that. Just because I felt like I was holding on to something that like I thought I wanted to do, but it simply just like wasn't what I thought it was gonna be. And I feel like everybody hits this epiphany moment, right? Like it's probably worse for people that want to be like doctors and lawyers and whatnot. There's a lot of school you got to put yourself through. But
Mhm.
for people like us, I'm like, yeah, you can make this switch. So I made my major just pretty broad, man. Like I kept it at like just calm marketing specialization stuff. And everything just came so easy to me. Like it wasn't easy, but I wanted to do the work. And I think that's when I really started to broaden my like experiences outside of sports too. So I had like a corporate retail internship with L Brands, like who's the parent company for used to be like Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, like all of those brands. And that really just changed the game for me just to see corporate for the first time. And I think that's the first time where it was just like, oh, we're running this campaign. We need you to tap in with like external comms. We're doing this. We need you to tap in with creative here. Send this to them. They'll make this. I'm like, who are these people? But I feel like that was like the internship that gave me like the green light of like, okay, I can do this. I like this workflow. I never felt like I could do full blown agency life because I heard about the grind. I love the end product, but I knew I wasn't cut out for the grind. So respect to everybody that is about the grind
It's
for
a
sure.
different grind. It's a different grind for sure. It's definitely a different grind. I wouldn't say it's harder, but like just there's more pressures. What would you say are the stressors in brand marketing, corporate marketing?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so many hands in the pot, man. Like, I feel like when you're at an agency, like you have your points of contacts, obviously, and like you're managing like maybe two, three people that are like filtering the feedback down to give you right to know what to work with. But like when you're actually in it, there's so many people that are involved in that decision, right? There's so many players. Everybody has a vision for how they want these projects to come to life, and I think that's the first thing that I learned. Like when I started working in corporate more, is just don't be offended. Like if something doesn't necessarily look like you always aspired it to be, like think about small ways that you can have impact. And I always say, like, especially on brand projects, I think that's where a lot of magic comes to play. You might make that one piece of feedback or have that one suggestion that the casual viewer may never know when they see like this advertisement somewhere, but because you brought it up, it changed the direction of the project or it avoided the craziest like scare or whatever. And I think those are like the small rewarding moments I would say on those brand projects. And I
Mhm.
think that's where I've found the joy. It's just being like, wow, like I do have influence here. Like just, you work on something for a year. And this one comment just saved this project for me personally. So I think that's where you find the joy on the corporate side. It's because like you have all these people that are gonna like maybe create a little bit of a swirl, but everybody has different pressures on them from different stakeholders and everything. So it's just learning how to manage people, I would say, is the biggest thing.
Yeah, because in agency life, it's kind of it's fairly protective. Like there are clear silos, I guess, like clear chain of command. Like you have your creatives, and you only
Yeah.
report up to your creative boss. You don't have
Yeah.
left and right forces tugging at your ideas and stuff like that. For the most part, it's usually pretty clearly defined,
Yeah.
and it's all towards a common end product of a good creative idea. So it's a little bit
Yeah.
different, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, hey man, it's all worth it at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so like, I am grateful that I figured that out early, right? Like, some people don't want to be corporate. Some are like totally cool on it. But like to your point, there are like even creatives that do have a goal of being in house somewhere. So
Yeah,
it's always good to have exposure to both, in my opinion.
for sure. So you had these internships. You got the one at was it L Brands, and that was
Yeah.
your first introduction to corporate marketing, what it's like at the top there. How'd you get that? Was that just through networking, through conversations, good resume with the ESPN, and the second internship I believe you had before that?
Yeah, I mean they're based in Columbus. That's where the headquarters was. So like again, just the benefit of being at OSU, like the network is ridiculous. But
Mhm.
I had actually had some friends that had internships at the company. They just weren't in that department. So that was kind of my introduction to them as a whole. But yeah, I applied like on a whim. Like they were literally closing the app. I didn't have an internship. And I had a friend that was just like, "Oh yeah, this app is open." So shout out to them for even sending me that. Because it was the same thing after graduation, man. Like because I was a little bit all over the place, like I didn't really have a job lined up um, after graduation. So I was really sitting here just like scrambling, trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And it was a similar thing, right? Just like tapping into the network, seeing what's out there. I was that person that was sending random LinkedIn messages before it was cool, of just like, hey, like you don't know me, but I needed an opportunity. What do you have? Literally anything, coordinator jobs, whatever. I was just looking for something.
Gotcha. Gotcha. But it worked out for L Brands, and then that was an
Yeah.
internship, correct? Then you go into what
Yeah.
year after that?
So I graduated. So like once I
Gotcha.
finished that internship, now I got to do that my junior and a little bit into my
Yeah.
senior year.
Yep.
Took my exams, graduated, looking for a job. I was lucky enough to be one of the ones that actually found a job um, before graduation, and so I ended up at Salesforce for my first job. Which, if you know anything about Salesforce, it's B2B software essentially, right? Like
Yep.
enterprise management
CRM.
software. I knew nothing about CRM. Like when I tell you this was like me, I just needed a job. I read up on the company. I heard that they were doing really well. I had a
They're
friend that
huge.
worked. Yeah, I mean they were huge, man. But like I'm in Ohio. They're based in San Francisco. Like I didn't know anything about Salesforce, but I needed a job. And so to your point, I was never too big for rotational programs or post grad programs, and I applied for one. And they essentially had one that was very like pre-sale specific. I would say like kind of like for those roles that kind of come in and help account executives seal deals essentially. But for the first time, they had opened up the program to more post-sales roles, I would say. So these are folks that were going to come in and become like these experts on these products of Salesforce and essentially like help retain the customers, almost like consult on these products. And so I got to come in and kind of like do that as my first job. I trained for 6 months and then like I was out in the field, right? Like delivering different engagements. I would go through kind of some more generic ones, but where I really started to hang my hat were the marketing engagements. Like I had no idea where that was going to land me. I just knew that it said marketing. I want to work in marketing, so do everything that says marketing on it. And I think that was the first time that I really just got to kind of like get good at a job. It wasn't what I wanted to do forever, and I knew that, but I was open and I was early in my career, so I didn't really have a lot of leverage, I would say. But yeah, it was a really good experience to come consult on like social strategy, email strategies, like people that are like at smaller companies, like some startups that are like, hey, like it's just me. I need a DIY solution for this campaign. What do I do? And I'm like, oh, I worked on some of this stuff. And I think that's where I really started to have some like a little bit of credibility, I would say, like in the industry.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so then how early on, like, did you realize maybe this wasn't going to be your end all, and there is no such thing really as an end all, I feel like today. But when did
Yeah,
you realize this wasn't maybe the best spot for you?
the first day.
Really? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Hey,
Like, I mean,
what do you
I
what do you say to
mean,
yourself then? Like you realize that you're like, okay, how long are you? Is the clock ticking in reverse? Then
yeah,
is what's do you start game planning right away?
yeah,
How do you approach that when you realize it might not be
yeah.
right?
I guess so. A step back too, like, so when I graduated, it was 2019, so it was still pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
It was very much like my interviews were happening in person. Like I was going to the office like every day, like it was normal. So it was one of those things where like I kind of had to just like check myself a little bit and be like, just a matter of a couple of months ago, you didn't have a job. And so when the pandemic came around and I was still employed compared to a lot of my friends in creative industry, just like, hey, like, there's really not a lot to complain about right now.
Right. So the
Like,
pandemic hits like pretty soon after you started. You realize at the beginning you
yeah.
didn't love it, but then the pandemic hits, you have a job, and like
Hmm.
that kind of helped you out
Exactly.
too. Yeah.
100%. It's one of those things where you got to be grateful for the things that you do have. And there was a lot that I thought I knew that I just didn't know in general. And I'm a firm believer. I don't think any experience is bad experience. It may not necessarily be like your end goal, but I'm a straight shooter. So shout out to my managers at the time that dealt with me that was like, yeah, like here's my 5 year plan. I'm gonna do this, that, and the other. And I think I've stayed in that realm, but like through coaching, I also had to learn that like you got to be open. You know what I mean? Like you got to understand that there are going to be things that you learn, like soft skills, like marketing adjacent, like skills that may not necessarily be your day to day that you're dreaming of, but at the end of the day, like they're going to make you a better marketer. So I always say that like Salesforce was the job I didn't see coming, but it was the job that I needed because I do think it helped me really get good at my job, right? I think it was even that kind of like catapulted me into product marketing because
Oh yeah.
I transitioned to product marketing before I came to Spotify. And
Okay.
so I think because I was able to kind of like weather that storm, really got some good coaching, mentorship from my managers, like they bought in, right? Like you can't really teach a positive attitude and a good work ethic. So I feel like as long as you bring that to the table, like you'll find your way. But we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and you know this, to just grind, be successful, and get it pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. But and you got into that senior associate product marketing manager role within Salesforce, and that was your introduction to skills like competitive analysis, sales presentations, go to market strategy. I'm seeing here. Did that for a little
Yeah,
bit, and then what happens like with Spotify? How did that come about?
yeah, man. It was my 25th birthday. I'm having a quarter life crisis.
Yeah,
I'm
it
at
happens
this.
to everybody. Everybody. 25. Yes.
I don't know what it is. I think the frontal lobe
Fr-
develops for
Yes.
especially for us, like because
Yes.
men do mature a little slower. So like I was like,
It
all
takes a
right,
long
man.
time.
I was like, what am
Yes.
I doing? And I had taken off for my birthday that week. That was my first year in New York. It was a bit of a rough transition for me, just coming from more mid-major, like New York. No one's ready for this unless you're from here. So I wanted to take some time to check in with myself and kind of like get my bearings and things like that. And I saw a Spotify job on LinkedIn. It just said product marketing manager. I was a product marketing manager at the time, and I just applied for it. Like no reference, no nothing. I was a little frustrated at my career at the time because like I don't to your point, I didn't know where it was going. Like it was good, but I didn't know where it was going. But
Mhm.
Spotify I thought was a unique opportunity for me to combine like my aspirations to work in entertainment. Like I was still am like a huge connoisseur of music, right? So I was just like, oh, what an opportunity. Um, and I actually got like a random email from a recruiter on Thanksgiving Day, and ended up going through the job interview process all the way through the final round, and I didn't get the job, so didn't get it. Um, I find this out like the week before Christmas, so obviously Christmas was a little salty, and
Mhm.
but they were like,
Because then
yeah,
you
but
start like once you're in like the rounds of interview, and then you're thinking about your current job, you're like, well, I don't have to try this hard in my current job because I'm gonna get out of here.
You know what I mean? Like mentally,
Yeah.
you're here. Like I had already given like a heads up to my people at Salesforce. I was like, "Hey, I don't know. I might be leaving soon. I don't know." So I was a little bit like,
Oh, you're pretty transparent. Okay.
I don't like secrets, man. Maybe it's trust issues. I don't know. Like I just,
It's just
I was
business sometimes. It's just business.
It is, but like I said, I had great managers that dealt with me.
Yeah.
Like they
Okay.
they they are great people to this day.
Mhm.
But yeah, so it's just like I go on Christmas break, and then I get a random email from that same recruiter in January that's like, "Hey, actually, so this team just got headcount for a PMM role doing something different. Let's chat about it." And so she called me and she talks about it, and honestly, it ended up being even better than what I had interviewed for. Because what I
Nice.
interviewed for is, at the time, like, so when I applied, like Spotify was expanding to other audio forms. So we already had music, we had podcasts, we were expanding to, audiobooks. And so,
Love the audiobooks. Love them.
I, I mean, come on, like, who doesn't, right? So, like,
Sure.
but for me, it's just like I am not personally like an audiobook like connoisseur like some. And so like
Yeah.
that compared to what I got to work on, which was managing lyrics at Spotify as a music connoisseur, felt like it was a nice trade. And so there's like, yeah, you talked about music and entertainment so much that we just thought this would be like a better fit. So like shout out to my manager here for seeing that and like and just giving me a shot. She's like, I know your early career, it's hard to pivot. Um, but she's like, but because you were transparent with what you wanted, like it was easy to find something that fit that. So like I always tell people like closed mouths don't get fed. Like sometimes if you're just not authentically you, you're trying to be someone else and like just try to fit these molds, it doesn't work out. So like that's why in retrospect, it's easy to say don't worry about all those things, but really don't. Like I think if you just show up as yourself and you're really, straight about like what you want and what you aspire to do, the right opportunity will always come along. So that's how I ended up at Spotify.
Love it. And you didn't snap at that recruiter like, or like didn't like get mad at her because you didn't get the job. You say calm, cool, collected. You expressed who you were, what you were interested. Something popped up a couple months later. That is like a dream scenario. That's incredible.
It's crazy, man. No, it was a blessing for sure. Shout out to her. Like she's great people even to this day. But yeah,
Wonderful.
all relationships are good relationships in my opinion.
Wonderful. So now, I guess, like looking back, what advice would you tell your younger self, knowing what you know now? Like, would it be like, go check out the Spotify like rotational program? Like, and I don't want to
Yeah.
hear the answer. I wouldn't do anything differently.
Oh
That
no.
doesn't. Yeah, yeah. So go
I
ahead.
would move so I would move so differently. But I think what I did do that I liked, and I think it's good, is just like before you even get to like, oh yeah, I want this to Spotify apply, definitely do that. Be open, right? Like there might be this random pharmaceutical company that's looking for a creative and you have limited experience, right? And you know that your end goal might be to be at a Spotify. But if you don't have a lot of experience already, go get some experience. Like, who's to say that you can't do that and then go back and do it? Like, your story is your story, your journey is your journey. You know what I mean? And so, like, don't sleep on those opportunities that may not be too sexy because I think at the end of the day, like, you should go get some experience. You never know what that's going to be for you, right? Like, and so I think that was really important for me to understand. It's just like, hey, just because it may not be what I think that I want, you don't know what you want because you're not there yet. You could get there and hate it. You don't know that yet, right? So I always say like, don't sleep on the things that maybe you wouldn't normally be looking for because I think then your job pool is going to open up a lot more. And even with that, right? To your point, don't sleep on the post grad programs, right? Like I think those are so key. Don't sleep on the internships. Like they may not be exactly what you want them to focus on, like, but it's a foot in the door. It's a brand on the resume. Like that's where I feel like I benefit. It's just kind of like coming in and trying to be the best chameleon that I can be. Because I do like my goal is to be as well rounded of a marketer as possible. I never want to be a marketing leader one day that just can't speak educationally on something because I didn't
Yeah.
do it. So like that was my personal goal. So like don't sleep on the internships, don't sleep on those post grad opportunities. I know everybody wants to, climb some sort of a ladder, but like don't rush it. Like it's gonna happen. Yeah, and sometimes like that job is gonna come in the form of something you didn't think it would. So just keep your options open. Don't try to get too specific too soon, especially when you're early in your career.
Gotcha. And any advice, I don't know, like if to the account managers at agencies that you've worked with, advice for people on the agency side just to better relationships with their clients. And can you speak to that or want to pass?
No, I definitely would. I would say I've never. I mean, it's cliche. I haven't really had a bad experience with like any account manager to date that I've worked with at an agency. I think what I'll say is like the account managers that I enjoy working with the most are the ones that come with an open mind, willing to learn something in retrospect. Right. So, like, yes, you're here to do a job, but you're also willing to step into my world a little bit and understand like the things that I have to deal with. Because I think that makes you a better account manager at the end of the day, right? Like, you're able to now like position these solutions to these corporate partners in a way that like is their language. And I think the more business languages you're able to speak, the stronger that makes you as a partner, right? And I think the easier of a transition that is for you if you do decide to come over to like a Spotify one day, because you're like, hey, look at all these proposals that we've made based on these business cases. I know your audiences, right? Like, I know what you're trying to drive. I know your style. I know how you speak and copywriting. Like, all of those things matter. So I think the more that you're willing to kind of keep like that open mind, like the better partner you become at the agency side, and like the more marketable I think you make yourself as a potential, employee, whether it's Spotify, I don't know, like I don't know, Nike, like all these B2C marketing brands that you see out here that are like grabbing agency talent.
Love it. Zach, thank you so much for taking the time. How can people connect with you if they want to ask more questions, have a coffee chat? What's the best way?
Yeah, man. I mean, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. Like, I'm pretty responsive these days. I have Instagram. Yeah, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. I try like TikTok is more so just for me to have a feed. I'm not really like talking to many
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But yeah, my Instagram is a underscore ZO Burton underscore, and then my LinkedIn is just Zachary Burton, Zachary with an E, not an A. So if you don't find me, that's why.
All right. Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I hope people connect, and I wish you all the success at Spotify. What a fun brand. What a great place to be. And maybe I'll see you around New York soon.
Yeah, man, let's do it. Great chat. Appreciate the time.
Yes, sir.